In this video, we're watching a storm forming this weekend that's expected to bring severe thunderstorms to tens of millions of people across 24 states with destructive winds, large hail, and possible tornadoes on Sunday and Monday. Things are just getting started as multiple severe weather outbreaks are expected to strike in early April. I'll be showing you what to expect from these storms, but before we jump in, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more weather updates. Right now, we actually have a storm bringing rain, freezing rain, and snowfall across parts of the Great Lakes region and the Northeast. And then we have another storm bringing rain, thunderstorms, and flooding across parts of the South. But then the storm back here over the western U.S. is going to move eastward, and that's what's going to create the first of potentially several major severe weather events. Right now, if you live in the reddish, pinkish colored area, you're under a red flag warning for some pretty extreme fire danger, especially over the Southwest. Some of this is due to some strong wind gusts across the northern part of the U.S. You have, in the blue colors, you have winter weather advisories and winter storm watches. Pink color is going to be a winter storm warning. And if you're in this purple area, you're under an ice storm warning where there could be some significant freezing rain accumulation and significant icing from this winter storm that's happening tonight. And then across parts of the South, we have tornado watches and flood watches in effect. But things are going to get interesting. We have, for Saturday, March 29th, this is tomorrow, we have a slight risk of severe weather for northern Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, a big section of Missouri. Now, the SPC has this for significant hail over 2 inches in diameter across northern Oklahoma and part of eastern Kansas. And I do think that if storms are able to form in this, there's sort of a cap, but if these storms are able to form, then significant severe weather potential with this. But this is really just building up to the big event, which is Sunday, March 30th. We have a pretty big enhanced risk. If you're in this orange area, that's a level 3 enhanced risk of severe weather. This is pretty significant. This is a giant enhanced risk. Who knows, they might even upgrade it in a small area to a moderate risk. We'll have to see. And then around that is a big slight risk of severe weather. This goes all the way across the Ohio Valley, parts of the Midwest, all the way down into the South, with at least a 30 to 44% chance of severe weather. Potentially, they might even add a 45% risk of severe weather. That is possible. The CSU model is showing a 52% probability of severe weather centered around Memphis, Tennessee. So this would be a moderate risk of severe weather if the SPC were to upgrade this. And then there's for Monday, March 31st, there's a big slight risk of severe weather that goes all along the East Coast, really all the way from Boston all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So this is a very widespread severe weather event. Definitely make sure you're paying attention to this, because this is actually just one of potentially several severe weather events down the road. Severe weather season is definitely ramping up as we go into spring. Yeah, there's another severe weather outbreak expected. This is a day 6 slight risk of severe weather for Wednesday, April 2nd, across pretty much some of these same areas, actually. And the CSU model is showing possibly a 30 to 45% risk of potentially significant severe weather across the South with this one. Here's a look at the simulated precipitation on the Euro model, and they're showing some heavy snow, some freezing rain, and some rain and thunderstorms across Wisconsin and Michigan, the part of the Great Lakes region going into tonight. And then this kind of slides eastward across parts of the Northeast with some pretty heavy snowfall tonight going into Saturday morning. Then we have more rainfall, and then there's just a lot of rain and thunderstorms across the South. And then we have this low pressure system that starts intensifying east of the Rockies, and this is the first part of the severe weather event. And into Saturday night, the Euro model is showing there's the potential for some severe thunderstorms across eastern Kansas, potentially. And we'll have to see if if these storms are able to fire up, the atmosphere is definitely favorable for severe weather, but there is a cap, so it might be a bit hard for it to, and that cap is actually pretty strong according to some of the forecast models. This is showing, an isolated severe weather possible, and the atmosphere, besides for the cap, the atmosphere is pretty favorable for severe storms. But then going into Saturday night, we have a lot of rain across the South and the Ohio Valley. This could potentially interfere with some of the severe weather activity later on, but the atmosphere is still going to be very unstable and just a very favorable environment for severe thunderstorms. And then across parts of Minnesota and the upper peninsula of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, again, more heavy snow and freezing rain with this. So kind of a repeat. And then we start seeing thunderstorms really, really firing up across Illinois on the Euromodel by the early afternoon on Sunday. And then this kind of just progresses eastward now. They're showing that you could have some discrete storms across parts of the South that could fire up, and this could produce a lot of hail and potentially some strong tornadoes if we get some storms firing up in the wrong place. And further north, it kind of looks like it quickly turns into a linear event, and then these storms do kind of on this model by Saturday evening, pretty linear storms. So the main thing with those would be some destructive winds, but also large hail with this, and tornadoes within the line of storms is also possible. It really just continues, and then a new line of storms kind of forms according to the Euro model, racing through the South. And then these storms just keep going Sunday night into Monday, going all the way across the East Coast. And then that storm moves away. But then there's another storm system, and this one looks kind of bad. Like a pretty intense low pressure system on the Euro model. This is firing up even in the early morning. You have storms really firing up across the Midwest and even the central and southern plains. It really just blows up later in the afternoon across these same areas that we're looking at for Sunday. And this looks very intense on the forecast model. Now, of course, it's not exactly what it's going to look like, and this is still going to change significantly, most likely, but it's just showing the potential for a lot of severe weather and also heavy rainfall and flooding if we see something like this set up, where you have just lines of storms just kind of following each other. And this is pretty intense. And then this is going all the way into Thursday. We have more severe weather and heavy rain across the South. And then we kind of have another storm system kicking up more severe weather for the same areas, more rain, more thunderstorms. So this is going to be a flooding event, if nothing else. But also looks like multi-day severe weather events will be possible at times with this. And this goes all the way into Saturday, April 5th. Some of these storms will probably be less intense, but still a lot of rain. Finally, it looks like by Sunday, April 6th, going into Monday, April 7th, it's still raining across the South and the Southeast. So that's going to be a ton of rain before finally things really, really look like they could potentially tone down across the U.S. by April 9th. So this is going to be a potentially 10 days of active weather, at least. Going back to our Sunday severe weather event, here's a look at the instability, and we have all this instability building up on Saturday into Saturday evening, Saturday night, but it's actually capped. So it's going to be really hard to get storms to actually form in this, and so it's just building up instability for Sunday. You could have some storms finally by the early morning that might be able to be uncapped in this area. Once the cold front hits it, then you could get some more significant storms to quickly intensify. But it looks like finally by Sunday afternoon, then things really open up across the South. around the Mississippi River area, eastern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, even going all the way up into Illinois and Indiana, even parts of Ohio, kind of. And then as that cold front comes in, that's why it looks like potentially a more linear event if things are capped until the cold front hits it, and then it creates this intense squall line that goes through. Tornadoes will be possible in that, but it's mostly, I do think it looks like it could be mostly a big wind event with all hazards of severe weather included as well. And then even you have significant instability across the South, even going into Sunday night and into Monday, things keep going. And you have, by Monday afternoon, Monday evening, you have even over 3,000 joules of CAPE along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. You have, this is still like 2,000 joules of CAPE across the Southeast in a lot of places, even 1,000 joules in some places, even in Pennsylvania, North Carolina. So this is a pretty widespread event, obviously. Here's a look at the dew points. Notice all the moisture really building up on Saturday, going to Saturday evening, and then kind of where the dry line and the cold front meet is kind of where you could see some initial storms potentially going through Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and you have a lot of dew points. These are dew points in the 60s all the way up into Michigan. So there's a lot of moisture being pushed very far to the north with this, and some very warm temperatures, but also those very high dew points, making it pretty favorable for severe weather. So there's plenty of moisture for these storms. If it just depends on where these storms actually set up. That this could definitely be. This is definitely looking like a significant severe weather event. And then we have dew points in the upper 60s, close to 70 across parts of the South, Arkansas, Mississippi, even closer to the Gulf. Dew points in the low 70s. Before the cold front really hits this and really clears things out, but there's going to be even dew points reaching the mid 60s, potentially in eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, all the way up. Dew points around 60 degrees, even into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and potentially close to New York City. So that's a ton of moisture with this. Here's a look at the supercell composite parameter, which is kind of showing where the atmosphere is most favorable for supercells. And it's showing it is pretty favorable like Saturday night, but again, it's capped. So if storms were to form here in Oklahoma, then of course they would have a pretty big opportunity to turn into supercells. But it is capped. So then the supercell composite is moderate until we get to the late afternoon, and then you have some supercell composite values of 4 to a 6, maybe a 7 or 8, and then you have across parts of the South some supercell composite values an 8 or a 9. So going into Sunday evening, Sunday night, things look like they could get pretty intense right there, and this is in that area that CSU highlighted for a 45% risk of severe weather. So it could get pretty intense down there. And then moving into the East Coast, the supercell composite values are a bit less. A similar thing to look at is the STP values, which kind of just shows how favorable the atmosphere is for significant tornadoes. And notice it's really cut off until we get to later on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. We have some pretty high values in some places, even up to a 4, a 2 to a 4 along this line that goes all the way from like Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and then again, this is near Memphis, Tennessee. We can have some STP values up to an 8, which that's pretty high. So a slight opportunity if we were to see discrete storms in this environment, we would definitely see the potential for some significant tornado activity. But if it's linear, there's going to be the potential for some strong tornadoes within the line. but not quite as intense as if these were discrete storms. And then the supercell composite values do drop off through the night and going into Monday. Things really driving this is going to be, we kind of have this trough building throughout the day on Sunday, moving into towards this severe weather risk area. So right here out ahead of this trough is where we're going to see a lot of the severe weather occurring, and then that trough kind of moves on, and then we have, going into Monday, another trough that kind of builds in to kind of continue the severe weather potential. And this kind of happened with that other tornado outbreak that happened. You had kind of an initial system and then another trough kind of reforming this severe weather event. But then looking at Wednesday, April 2nd, it does look way more intense. In the mid-levels, it definitely looks way more intense for the Wednesday, April 2nd severe weather outbreak. It's definitely a very, very powerful storm. And out ahead of it again is where we're going to see most of the severe weather. And then the mid-level winds just keep pushing over this same area in a way that could create severe weather potential. And you have this giant trough, this giant trough across the southwest, and then out ahead of that is just continued potential for severe weather events, and of course just thunderstorms in general. And this continues for a while until we get to around April 9th or so, is when we have more of a ridge across the western U.S., and then more of colder air coming down into the eastern U.S., and the pattern kind of completely changes. Definitely a very active weather pattern with multiple opportunities for severe weather. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit the like button, share the video, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone, out.